What's up, guys? Welcome back to Inside Out Precision. Today we're going to be going over different methods of firing a thumb button or a thumb release. I've been getting a ton of questions recently on this, both on Instagram and on YouTube, and I think that just has to do with a lot of people are wanting to use these now for a hunting application. You know, traditionally these have always been kind of a target release, but in the last, I don't know, 4 or 5 years, maybe even less than that, like probably more 2 or 3 years, I'm seeing a lot more people switch into them for hunting application as well as 3D and target and, you know, pretty much just all around shooting. You know, I've always said I think it's easier to get a true surprise shot with one of these, but on the bad shots, they are a little less forgiving than like an index style. But nonetheless, there are definitely some methods to firing these that I'm not going to say any of them are right or wrong. It's going to be what works best for you. So hopefully in this video I can give you the tools to kind of practice each of them and see which works best for you. Before we get into that though, I do want to remind you to hop over to InsideOutPrecision.com. Got a bunch of merch on there, hats, hoodies, t-shirts, all of the above. The holidays are coming up. We got some new stuff coming out, should make great gifts. So head on over to InsideOutPrecision.com and get yourself some swag. Now, back to firing a hinge, a thumb button. So the first and probably most common way you're gonna see, and this is what like Dudley teaches, this is what most coaches are gonna tell you is you know, thumb comes static onto the barrel here, and you're just gonna keep pulling essentially until that shot fires. So you're never gonna see your thumb move necessarily. This is a really cool shot trainer, by the way. This War Torn Archery makes this. You know, I can change the draw length. It's got a bubble on there. Little torque line indicators to see if you're torquing it. It's probably the most realistic feeling shot trainer I've found. And it's really good to practice with one of these. So, you know, a true surprise shot or pulling through the shot would mean, you know, I come in, thumb comes on that barrel, and as I'm aiming, now this is exaggerated, but from the back, you know, as I'm aiming, that elbow is going to pull at about a 30-degree angle kind of back behind my ear there. And when, you know, as I keep pulling and building that pressure, boom, the shot just breaks, hand comes back over the collarbone, ends up behind my ear. This method works really well. This is how I shot one of these for a long, long time. Where I see this having trouble these days, and this has nothing to do with the release or the method, it has to do with the cam systems on newer bows. The back wall on a lot of these bows now is so solid. And what I mean by that is, you know, when the draw stops come around and it hits the cables on the bow here, there's no give at all. Personally, when I aim using back tension, meaning, you know, when I come in, I anchor, it's that kind of like push pull, so strong bow arm towards the target here from the lat, and then this elbow again kind of comes. If I draw, boom, it's that loading of the back. So it's boom here. That's how I aim. So by the time I come in and load my back, I've taken up all the sponge or the slack in my back wall. I can't pull that bow any further. So for me, what ends up happening, if I try to fire the release by physically pulling more, it tends to just want to pull my front arm either to the left, so I'm a left-handed shooter, wants to either pull it to the left or it'll pull it straight down. So because there's no sponge in the cams anymore, I have nothing to pull into. You know, back when I shot a thumb button a lot in college, I was shooting an old Hoyt Pro Elite, and it had a solid back wall, but there was a solid probably 1/4 to 3/8 of an inch of sponge there. So I could pull in to that back wall to aim, and then there was still a little bit of give in that back wall as I was expanding until the shot broke. Nowadays, like I said, it tends to just kind of pull my front arm around. Now, there's still a lot of people that shoot this way. I'm not saying by any means that like this is an antiquated or outdated method of shooting, but if you're having issues with that, you know, you can only shoot as well as you can aim to a certain point, right? So if I'm pulling through the shot and it pulls my pin to the left and the shot breaks, guess what? You're hitting left. So for me, I've had better success with a different method. I call this is kind of like You're still using back tension. You're still technically pulling through the shot. But I'm not, once I load my back and I start aiming, I'm just maintaining that pressure. I'm not adding any more pressure to it. So the way I personally fire one of these is, I come in, boom, load the back, thumb comes on that trigger, and then as that pin settles, I literally just start bringing my thumb. It's like the palm of my hand. I start bringing my thumb and my pinky together. It's almost like you're starting to make a fist, and I'm not saying you're doing this necessarily, but I start collapsing that palm a little bit. And what that does is brings my ring finger towards my thumb, and boom, the shot fires. For me, I have a little better control over the shot with this. Now, I know you're saying, oh, you don't want to control the shot. It should be a surprise. You can still get a surprise shot like this. I'm not commanding the shot, but if that pin bobbles a little bit or I dip low, I don't have to like let up on the pressure and then restart. I can just relax my hand a little bit, and then when it comes back on, I can start, again, this is kind of a exaggerated motion, but it's that motion there. I've noticed that having a release so this is the Stand Perfects. I can make this a 3-finger or a 4-finger. I can change the positioning of that 3rd and 4th finger to really get the best leverage, or something where, I can get pressure on my ring and middle finger to help squeeze that release into my hand. It's almost as if I was shooting like a hinge, but the hinge, it's not rotating, right? Because the head on a thumb button doesn't rotate. See if I can do this. It's probably gonna look on camera just the same as pulling through the shot. But again, I come in, load the back, strong bow arm towards target, finger comes on, and then as I'm aiming, I just start, it looks the same on camera, but I'm literally just squeezing those 2 fingers into my thumb barrel. The key with this is you gotta have a static thumb. You can't, as I squeeze, if I relax that thumb, it's not gonna fire. That's the way I have the best results with the thumb button. I kind of changed over to this about 1.5 years ago, and immediately noticed an increase in my scores. And I'm not saying it jumped me like 5 points, but I dropped a few less X's, and like I said, I feel like I have more control over the shot that way. The third and kind of taboo way of doing it is literally commanding the shot, meaning you're still going to pull into that back wall. In my opinion, you always need back tension to aim well, and to make sure you're shooting from the same spot in that valley every time up against the stops. But you watch guys like Kyle Douglas. He commands the shot. If you don't know who Kyle Douglas is, Google him. I wouldn't say he's an up-and-comer. He's been in the game for a few years, but he's a young guy. He won everything last year. He back-to-back Vegas champion. I think he won field nationals. He won a bunch of ASA shoots, like very well-rounded shooter. And he'll be the first to tell you that he commands that shot, meaning he comes in, and again, this will be exaggerated, but when he comes into, you'll see him aiming, and the thumb comes on, and then it's, I'm not saying he punches the trigger, but he decides when that shot is fired. Tim Gillingham is another great example of that. If you Google Tim Gillingham, he's made a living off, wouldn't say punching the trigger, but commanding the shot. The downside to this is when it goes wrong, it goes really wrong. Lots of times when people decide to shoot, whether it's an index style, punching the trigger like this, or moving their thumb, when the brain says, okay, now, go, it's not just that thumb that moves. Generally, the whole, everything kind of flinches, and that's when things go awry. So if you're gonna shoot like this, what's really, really important is that you have to keep your bow arm and your head in the shot. I think a lot of people overlook the head. So, I don't know if you've ever golfed before, but I golfed a lot when I was younger, and anytime you would scull the ball or, just barely hit the top of it and it'd go 15 yards on the ground, it's because you start looking, your head comes up and you're looking for where the ball went before you actually get through your swing. And so as the head comes up, the whole body comes up. And in archery, it's just the opposite. If I'm shooting, if I punch the trigger and pull my head up, the arm goes down. Head goes right, arm goes left. Head goes left, arm goes right. So if you peek with your head, your arm is pretty much going to do the opposite of whatever your head does. So it's very, very important to make sure, if you are someone who commands the shot, that you keep your head and your bow arm completely in that shot pretty much until you hear the arrow hit the target. So if you over exaggerate a little bit on your follow through, so like you shoot, you know, boom, and then you don't drop till you hear that arrow actually hit the target. That'll help you down the road, not drop your bow arm out or get your head out of the shot when you decide to command the trigger. Now, this probably wouldn't be a way that I would like recommend somebody start to learn. To be completely honest, you're probably going to do it without even knowing it when you first start shooting one of these. You know, I think the hardest method is the true surprise shot, where you just sit there and pull, boom, and the shot breaks. And the reason for that is because that pin, for most people, you know, that pin's kind of in and out of the spot, and our brain doesn't want that bow to fire when the pin's not in the middle. So what people end up doing is just punching the trigger when the pin crosses the middle, as opposed to letting it float and just pulling through until the shot fires. So again, you're probably going to do this unknowingly, or maybe you know you're doing it but unwillingly when you first start shooting one of these. But if you're going to go with a commanded shot like that, again, you need to keep your bow arm in the shot, and then the trigger tension is also a big one. If I have a really stiff trigger tension, I'm going to hang up when I try to punch the trigger. So most guys that shoot a commanded shot shoot a fairly hair trigger, to where they can come on and rest their thumb on the button, but there's hardly any pressure. And then when it's time to go, the thumb barely has to move in order to get that shot to fire. Whereas conversely, you know, if I'm shooting just pure back tension where I'm just pulling, I want a really stiff trigger. I want to be able to get my thumb around that thing and get a solid connection, because I'm literally pulling on it. It's just like if I was going to pull a weight in the gym on like a cable machine, you know, I'm going to get a hold of that bar. I'm not just going to loosely grab it and pull it. For me, I shoot a fairly like medium trigger tension. You know, I want to be able to come in there and solidly rest my thumb on there, but I don't want to have to sit there and squeeze until it fires. Like, I come on when that pin hits, just as soon as I start to collapse, you know, start bringing my ring finger towards my thumb, boom, the shot fires. So based on the method that you're going to fire, you're going to want to play around with that trigger tension. Another thing I really like about this Stand Perfects is there's all different lengths of pegs and two different size barrels, and then I can position them. You know, I can roll this back further, I can roll it forward further, to where you can really get that comfortable position, to where when I come in and I just close my hand, everything lands right where I want it to. You know, this is not by any means the only release that has that capability. You know, True Ball makes a bunch of releases, like the Goat, the Fulcrum. You know, the blade doesn't have any different fingers, but it definitely has some ability to change the position of that barrel. So in my opinion, that's a really important feature if you're looking for a release, in order to get the most comfortable feel in your hand. You know, I don't want to have to get back and then manipulate my hand in any way to get onto the trigger. I want to just be able to draw, anchor, come right in, and have it be there. So I hope this helps. Those of you who have already had one of these for a long time and are shooting well with it, this video may not be for you, but if you're a newer shooter to one of these, or you're thinking about switching over, try these 3 different methods. It's going to take some time to figure out what works best for you. And like I said, I'm not here to tell you any one of those is right or wrong. Archery is all about personal feel and personal preference. There's extremely successful shooters that all use different methods in execution on these. So I hope that helps you guys a little bit. I know that, you know, when I made the change from just pulling through to kind of, you know, just maintaining that back tension to aim, and then actually manipulating the release to fire, it helped me. So don't be afraid to switch things up, try new things. You know, that's kind of what this sport is. It's always progressing, always evolving. You know, what was working 20 years ago is not exactly what everybody's doing today. So as usual, guys, thank you for watching. Remember to head on over to InsideOutPrecision.com, pick yourself up some merch. We really appreciate all the support. And as usual, remember, precision is a decision. Keep them in the middle, and I'll see you on the range.